John sat quietly in his apartment, the soft glow of his laptop illuminating his determined face. Outside, the faint jingle of car keys from the hallway was a sound he had learned to dread, a warning that his reckless brother Ryan had taken his prized car again without permission. This wasn't the first time, but unlike before, John's reaction was different. Where once frustration and panic would have consumed him, now there was only calm, cold calculation. He didn't rise to confront Ryan or shout in anger. Instead, John took a slow breath and listened. The engine's roar grew louder, the unmistakable sign that Ryan had started the car and was about to drive off. John had prepared for this moment meticulously. The car was parked beneath a notoriously weak limb of an old oak tree at the curb, positioned perfectly to become part of his silent plan. His coffee sat untouched on the desk, the bitter aroma failing to pierce the quiet satisfaction spreading inside him. John knew Ryan's driving was reckless and careless, and that the insurance covered double the car's value. This was no accident, it was a carefully set trap. As the car moved forward, the old branch creaked under increasing pressure. Suddenly, it snapped with a loud crack, shattering the silence of the night and startling Ryan with a sharp noise. John heard the muffled sound of Ryan's panicked shouts from outside but remained still, unmoved by the chaos. This was the opening move in a long-awaited game of revenge. His mind wandered back to years of betrayal, neglect, and emotional wounds inflicted by a family that had long underestimated and discarded him. Now, he was no longer their victim. He was the architect of change, ready to dismantle the lies and manipulation piece by piece. The crash was not just the destruction of a car, it symbolized the breaking of chains that had bound John for so long. The insurance payout was merely the first victory in his silent war, a war fought with patience, precision, and a cold resolve. Opening a new document on his laptop, John began outlining the next steps of his plan. His fingers hovered over the keys, eager yet composed. The distant wail of sirens approached, signaling the fallout of the accident, but John's heart remained steady. This was no longer about anger or grief. It was about control and reclaiming what was rightfully his. He sipped the coffee, now cold, feeling grounded and ready. The moment had arrived, not with a scream, but with quiet determination. The game was underway, and John intended to win. John carried the weight of years etched deep into his features. His eyes held a quiet sorrow, a shadow cast by countless betrayals and disappointments. Yet beneath that wounded exterior was a mind sharp as a blade, constantly analyzing, calculating, and plotting. He had learned early that raw emotion was a luxury he could no longer afford. Each setback had carved a layer of resilience, transforming him into a strategist who wielded silence and patience like weapons. His calm demeanor masked the storm within, a storm ready to reshape his life. Sophia stood unwavering by John's side, a beacon of loyalty and strength. Where John's quiet mind plotted, Sophia's heart fueled him with unwavering support. She understood the depths of his pain and the breadth of his resolve. Her presence was a balm to his loneliness, a constant reminder that he was not alone in this fight. Their relationship, built on trust and shared hardships, was a sanctuary amid the chaos of his fractured family. Sophia was more than a partner, she was his anchor and co-conspirator in the battle to reclaim his life. Ryan, by contrast, was a tempest of recklessness and cunning. The younger brother thrived in manipulation, weaving charm and deceit to mask his irresponsibility. Privileged and indulged, Ryan had long been the family's favored child, shielded from consequences by a protective wall built of excuses and empty promises. His reckless choices left a trail of damage, not just material but emotional, as he siphoned resources and attention from those who deserved them. Ryan's smug grin and careless swagger belied a deeper insecurity, one that John knew all too well. Yet Ryan remained dangerously unaware of the storm he had stirred. Deborah, the sister, was a master of subtlety and ambition. She moved through the family's social circles with calculated grace, her smiles often thin veils hiding sharper intentions. Her ambitions created friction, her loyalty often swayed by personal gain. Deborah's presence complicated the family dynamics further, as she played roles that ranged from supportive sibling to rival in a constant game of power and control. John recognized her ability to adapt, to exploit weaknesses, and he treated her as both an adversary and a variable in his complex plan. The family gatherings were battlegrounds layered with tension. Past betrayals lingered like ghosts in every word spoken and every glance exchanged. John, once hopeful for reconciliation, now bore the scars of broken promises and cold dismissals. His silence in these moments was often mistaken for weakness, but those who truly knew him understood it as a shield forged from years of quiet suffering. The fractured relationships weighed heavily on his spirit, but they also fueled his determination to break free from the chains of his past. Sophia often watched these interactions with a mixture of sadness and resolve. She saw how John was tested, how the family dynamic sought to unravel his composure. Yet with each encounter, his strength grew, not in loud confrontation but in steady, unyielding resolve. Together, they planned patiently, knowing that the path to justice was not paved with anger but with strategy. John's quiet suffering was a testament to endurance. He bore the emotional toll of neglect and manipulation without surrendering his dignity. The emotional wounds were deep, but so was his commitment to change the narrative. As the family's shadows lengthened, John prepared to step out of the darkness with a plan that would redefine power and loyalty on his terms. John's phone buzzed sharply, piercing the quiet of his apartment. It was a call from his mother, her voice frantic and strained. "Ryan's crashed your car. It's totaled," she hissed between panicked breaths. John's grip tightened around the receiver, his expression unreadable. The reckless brother's careless actions had finally reached a breaking point, and the family's fragile peace shattered with it. The news spread rapidly, igniting a wildfire of tension that consumed the household. That evening, the family gathered for dinner, an event that had long been a stage for hidden grievances and unspoken conflicts. The air was thick with the scent of roasted lamb and expensive perfume, an attempt to mask the bitterness simmering beneath the surface. John sat at the polished mahogany table, watching the familiar faces twisted by anger, guilt, and frustration. His mother played the worried matriarch, her voice laced with passive-aggressive remarks about stress and responsibility. His father, once a pillar of authority, struggled to maintain control, his words hollow and rehearsed. Ryan, sullen and defiant, avoided John's gaze, while Deborah observed quietly, her calculating eyes betraying no emotion but storing every detail. The confrontation was inevitable. Accusations flared, old wounds reopened, and resentment spilled like poison. John listened, detached but attentive, as his family revealed their true colors, exploiting him financially, dismissing his worth, and burdening him with their failures. The trust fund his father had promised, the support his mother claimed to provide, all illusions designed to keep him compliant. Sophia reached out, her hand resting lightly on John's, a silent gesture of solidarity. She whispered words of encouragement, reminding him that he was no longer alone in this struggle. Her presence steadied him, reinforcing his resolve to reclaim control over his life. Deborah's silence was telling. She measured every word, every expression, weighing the shifting power dynamics. Her ambitions hung in the balance, and she was prepared to seize any advantage the family's unraveling might offer. As the night deepened, John's realization crystallized. The family he once sought approval from had become a source of exploitation and pain. The emotional chains that bound him were forged not from love but from control and manipulation. This revelation ignited a fierce determination within John. No longer willing to be a pawn in their games, he resolved to take charge, to dismantle the structures that had oppressed him and build a future on his own terms. With Sophia by his side, he began crafting a plan that would not only expose the family's deceit but also reclaim his rightful place in the world. The dinner ended with no resolutions, only the heavy weight of unspoken threats and fractured loyalties. But for John, the seeds of transformation had been sown. The chaos unleashed by Ryan's reckless act was the catalyst for a reckoning long overdue, a reckoning that would redefine family, power, and justice. John sat alone in the quiet of his apartment, the weight of years pressing down on his shoulders. The betrayals, the broken promises, the countless times he had been sidelined by those who should have loved him most, it all collided within him like a storm of conflicting emotions. Beneath his composed exterior, a tempest brewed. Loneliness gnawed at his soul, and anger, long suppressed, simmered just beneath the surface. Memories surfaced unbidden, moments when his worth was questioned, when sacrifices were overlooked, and when his voice was drowned by the louder demands of his family. He recalled the bitter sting of that 21st birthday party, where instead of celebration, he was handed a solitary cupcake, its lone candle flickering as his father announced the liquidation of his trust fund to bail out Ryan's failures. The humiliation was profound, the message clear: John was expendable, a resource to be drained for the sake of others. Yet, in these darkest recollections, John found clarity. Each wound etched a deeper understanding of his strength and resilience. He realized that to survive, he had to mask his pain, to craft an illusion of weakness that his family could manipulate, all the while nurturing a resolve that grew fiercer with every slight. Sophia remained his steadfast anchor in this turbulent sea. She sensed the battles raging within him, offering quiet comfort and unwavering support. Her concern was palpable. She worried about the toll the coming fight might take on him, feared the isolation that revenge often demanded. But she also recognized the necessity of his transformation. In her eyes, John was no longer the broken brother, he was a force awakening. Together, they navigated the delicate balance between vulnerability and strength. John's tears, when they came, were calculated, a performance to maintain the facade his family expected. Behind closed doors, his resolve hardened. He pored over plans, legal documents, and strategies, channeling his emotions into actions rather than words. The mask he wore was both shield and weapon. It concealed the depths of his pain and the breadth of his ambitions. His family's underestimation became his advantage, a blind spot he intended to exploit. John was no longer a victim but a tactician, playing a long game with patience and precision. Through sleepless nights and quiet moments of reflection, John wrestled with his duality, the need to feel deeply and the necessity to remain guarded. The emotional scars remained, but they no longer defined him. Instead, they fueled a purpose that transcended personal hurt. As dawn broke over the city skyline, John stood at the window, Sophia's hand in his. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with risk and sacrifice, but for the first time in years, he felt a flicker of hope. The pain of the past had carved space for something new, a chance to reclaim his life, dignity, and power on his own terms. John's quiet determination shifted into decisive action as he sought allies who could help dismantle the web of deceit woven around him. He reached out to Julian, a private investigator known for his discretion and tenacity, someone who had earned a reputation recovering stolen valuables and exposing hidden truths for the world's elite. Julian's sharp intellect and bulldog-like persistence made him the perfect partner in John's carefully crafted campaign. Simultaneously, John engaged a skilled legal expert who specialized in corporate investigations and family disputes. Together, they began combing through the tangled finances and secret dealings that had long been obscured by his family's influence. Each document revealed layers of fraud, misappropriation, and nepotism, painting a damning picture of a family empire built on lies. The first explosive revelation came in the form of a stolen family heirloom, a priceless watch passed down through generations. John had always known it was a symbol of the family's legacy, but it had mysteriously disappeared from his possession. With Julian's investigation, the truth emerged: the watch was being flaunted publicly at a high-profile gala by John's own father, a brazen act that exposed the family's hypocrisy. On the night of the gala, John sat in the shadows, watching live feeds on his laptop as his father paraded the watch, a Calatrava reference, a masterpiece of understated elegance, on his wrist. Julian, dressed sharply and exuding quiet authority, approached the event's silent auction, ready to reveal the stolen heirloom's true status. The moment Julian publicly identified the watch as stolen, a hush fell over the crowd. The shock and shame rippled through the gathering of CEOs, judges, and old money matriarchs. Cameras captured every moment of the humiliation, and social media buzzed with the scandal within hours. But John's plan did not stop there. He had uncovered another betrayal that cut deeper. Deborah had been stealing his original design sketches and passing them off as her own. The revelation came after carefully reviewing footage from a hidden camera installed near his design portfolio, which caught Deborah photographing his work with a spare key she had secretly retained. A major fashion magazine had recently praised Deborah's collection, featuring a dress unmistakably copied from John's avant-garde designs. The betrayal fueled John's resolve, turning personal wounds into strategic ammunition. Armed with irrefutable evidence, John prepared his next moves. His legal team drafted cease and desist letters, while Julian compiled dossiers of incriminating material on the family's financial malfeasance. The blending of personal vendettas with legal tactics created a potent force, dismantling the family's protective veneer. As Deborah's fashion show was cancelled amid a wildfire of negative publicity and accusations of plagiarism, and the stolen heirloom scandal dominated headlines, John watched from a distance, his satisfaction tempered by the gravity of his actions. He knew that these revelations were not just revenge, they were necessary steps to reclaim his life and expose the truth that had long been buried. Sophia remained his confidant through every step, offering quiet support even as the storm grew fiercer. John's journey had evolved from silent suffering to active conquest, and with each victory, he edged closer to the ultimate reckoning. John sat in his sleek apartment, a storm of emotions contained beneath his calm exterior as he prepared the final piece of his long-awaited reckoning. For months, he had meticulously gathered evidence, bank statements showing illicit transfers, emails revealing corporate cover-ups, internal memos outlining fraudulent accounting, and witness testimonies that pierced the carefully maintained family facade. Each document was a nail in the coffin of the empire his father and siblings had built on deception. The moment had arrived. John authorized his legal team to send an encrypted dossier to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the company's major investors, and a prominent investigative journalist at the Wall Street Journal. The file was airtight, detailing every instance of corporate fraud, funds siphoned to cover Ryan's gambling debts, fake consulting fees paid to his mother, inflated executive bonuses, and systematic manipulation of financial reports. The narrative was clear and damning. News of the revelations broke swiftly, like a tsunami crashing through the corporate world. Regulators launched immediate investigations, suspending the merger deal his father had desperately pursued for months. Investors, stunned and outraged, withdrew billions, sending the company's stock plummeting nearly 97% in pre-market trading. The empire's once unshakable foundations crumbled in the span of hours. John watched the fallout unfold with a measured satisfaction. His family's carefully constructed image shattered publicly. Headlines screamed accusations, and television news ran endless loops of their former glory juxtaposed against their disgrace. The city's elite whispered of the scandal in hushed tones over brunch and golf courses, their faces masks of shock and schadenfreude. Amid the chaos, John secured a deal that marked a new beginning. With Sophia's unwavering support and her own keen business acumen, they finalized funding for Phoenix Designs, a fashion house built on originality and ethical production. The investment was substantial, a multi-million-dollar lifeline that promised to turn John's dream into reality. Unlike the toxic environment he was leaving behind, Phoenix Designs symbolized hope, creativity, and integrity. Public humiliation became the family's new reality. Ryan was confined to the house, stripped of his freedoms, his reckless lifestyle curtailed. Deborah faced severe backlash as sponsors withdrew support and her brand's reputation collapsed. Their father, once the commanding patriarch, now appeared as a broken man, his arrogance replaced by fear and shame. Legal consequences loomed large. Prosecutors filed charges of fraud and embezzlement, signaling years of courtroom battles and potential imprisonment. The family's downfall was a spectacle, a harsh but fitting end to decades of manipulation and deceit. John, however, remained poised. He attended meetings with his new board, dressed in tailored suits that spoke of quiet power and refined taste. The contrast between the fallen dynasty and his rising empire was stark. Where his family had relied on greed and shortcuts, John built with vision and perseverance. Sophia's hand in his was a constant reminder of what they had endured, and what they had won. Together, they navigated the complexities of launching a company amid scandal, transforming adversity into opportunity. As the dust settled, John took a moment alone on the balcony of his penthouse, overlooking a cityscape bathed in the golden light of sunset. The legal battles were only beginning, but so was his true journey. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time it was his to define. His family's empire was no more, replaced by the promise of something new and just. John's victory was not born of vengeance alone but of reclaiming dignity and forging a future where he would never again be the overlooked son or broken victim. The roar of progress echoed louder than any betrayal. With Sophia beside him and Phoenix Designs rising from the ashes, John had finally seized his freedom and the power to shape his own destiny. John stood in the grand office overlooking the city, the weight of years of struggle finally giving way to a sense of accomplishment and quiet triumph. The legal battles had been arduous, but the victory was undeniable. The once-lost family assets were now firmly in his control, including the majority shares of the empire his father and siblings had once ruled with unchecked authority. The empire that had symbolized betrayal and exploitation had been transformed into a testament of his resilience and determination. Deborah had vanished from the public eye amid the scandal, retreating into anonymity to escape the harsh glare of scrutiny and criticism. Her ambitions, once sharp and calculating, were now shadows of a faded dream. The fashion world had turned its back, and sponsors who had once clamored for her attention distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with the tarnished name. Deborah's disappearance was a silent acknowledgement of the consequences her actions had wrought. Ryan, meanwhile, faced legal restrictions and the loss of privileges that had once shielded his reckless lifestyle. His freedom was curtailed, and the consequences of his choices became inescapable. The golden child who had lived in reckless abandon was now confined by the very structures he had abused. The house that once echoed with his bravado now felt like a cage, a daily reminder of his downfall. Through it all, John and Sophia found solace and strength in each other. Their journey, fraught with pain and betrayal, had forged a bond deeper than either had imagined. Together, they celebrated this new beginning, not with extravagance or ostentation, but with a profound sense of peace and empowerment. Their shared victories were quiet moments of joy, a toast in their sunlit kitchen, a walk through the bustling streets of a city that now felt like home, a glance exchanged in mutual understanding of all they had overcome. Yet, the scars of betrayal remained etched in John's heart. Memories of the past were not easily erased, but they had been softened by the justice finally served. The wounds that once bled silently beneath the surface now marked the path to healing and growth. John understood that forgiveness was a journey, not a destination, and he chose to move forward with strength rather than bitterness. Phoenix Designs flourished under John and Sophia's guidance, a beacon of originality and integrity in a world often marred by compromise. The company's success was not just measured in profits but in the respect it commanded and the community it nurtured. Grants, mentorship programs, and legal protections for young creators became part of their mission, ensuring that others would not endure the exploitation John had faced. John often reflected on the transformation he had undergone, from the quiet, wounded son to the decisive leader of an empire reclaimed. His story was one of redemption and rebirth, a testament to the power of resilience and strategic resolve. As he stood once more on his balcony, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars, John felt a profound gratitude. The journey had been long and fraught with pain, but the destination was worth every sacrifice. With Sophia by his side and the future unfolding before them, John embraced the promise of days yet to come, days defined not by the past, but by the strength and hope they had forged together. John gripped the steering wheel of his sleek new car, feeling the smooth leather beneath his fingers and the powerful hum of the engine reverberating through the chassis. The night air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and distant ocean spray as he drove along an empty highway that stretched endlessly ahead. Above him, the sky was a tapestry of stars, shimmering like scattered diamonds on a velvet canvas, silent witnesses to his journey. With every press of the accelerator, the car surged forward, a force of precision and grace matching the steady beat of John's own heart. The roar of the engine was no longer a sound of anger or rebellion, it was a song of liberation, a declaration of the freedom he had fought so hard to reclaim. The weight of years spent in shadows and silence seemed to lift with every mile, replaced by a quiet confidence born of hard-won victories and unwavering resolve. Behind him, the city lights faded into the distance, their glow softened by the night. In the rearview mirror, the ghosts of his past, betrayals, heartbreaks, and lost opportunities, shrunk smaller with each passing moment, becoming nothing more than faint shadows dissolving into the darkness. The chains that had once bound him were broken, and the path he traveled was his own, carved through determination and courage. Sophia's voice echoed gently in his mind, a reminder of the bond that had carried him through the darkest times. Together, they had faced down deception and despair, emerging stronger and more united. Her unwavering faith had been his anchor, grounding him when storms threatened to overwhelm. Now, as the road unwound beneath the wheels, John felt the fullness of that partnership, a shared future filled with promise and possibility. The highway curved gracefully ahead, illuminated only by the pale glow of the moon and the occasional flicker of distant headlights far behind. The world was vast and open, inviting exploration and new beginnings. John's thoughts drifted to the empire he had reclaimed, the dreams he was building with Sophia, and the legacy they would create together, a legacy born not from the ashes of betrayal, but from the strength of resilience and hope. He allowed himself a rare smile, the first unburdened by pain or doubt. The journey had been long and fraught with sacrifice, but it had led him here, to this moment of quiet triumph beneath the endless sky. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was his to travel, free from the ghosts that once haunted his every step. As the car sped onward, the hum of the engine blending with the whisper of the wind, John embraced the night's serenity. He was no longer the broken son seeking approval or the victim of a fractured family. He was a man reborn, driving toward a future forged by his own hands and steeled by the lessons of the past. With the stars as his guide and the open road before him, John accelerated into the unknown, leaving behind the ruins of betrayal and stepping boldly into the promise of tomorrow.